Something I'm sad is gone. Legion from FX had its series finale last night while we're recording on a Tuesday instead of a Monday. Um, yeah, Legion. So just to kind of summarize where we're at, because we haven't talked about it too much. We did the series, the season 3 premiere review, and then kind of talked about why we liked the show then. And just to kind of recap, Legion can be a confusing show. It's a lot about time travel, being inside your head. It's kind of almost like Inception in TV form in a lot of ways, but it's Inception mixed with like more psychedelia and just it. I think that psychedelic part is what shines through. Is the weirdness of it, the style of it, the 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 fact that you can tune in any week and see something that you usually aren't going to see on television and shot really well. And Noah Hawley has, I think, masterfully manned this helm. And I'm sad it's ending. How did you feel about the finale, about the final season, just kind of Legion in general, and then we'll talk some specifics.
Yeah. So looking back as a whole on the whole series, I think season 3 is a clear improvement over season 2, where season 2 truly got lost in the weeds from a narrative perspective, where it was becoming harder to appreciate the visual flourishes and the sheer uniqueness of the style. So it was really hard to follow what the hell was going on or why the story was even going in that direction. This, when things did happen, they didn't feel that satisfying, all that. We've talked about this, check those videos. 3, on the other hand, has a pretty straightforward plot, in terms of what's happening with David breaking bad and Sid and crew trying to stop him, and David trying to go back in time to change the past. And that's about it, to be honest. And despite that, I think there's still plenty of confusing aspects about season 3, but the more I watched the show, the more I thought about the season as I was watching, I just didn't really care anymore. That I didn't follow 100% because that's not really why I was interested. I was watching the show, of course, for the great performances, like most shows we watch these days. But as we've been saying, the visuals are just so unique for TV. And just as we said at the top of the premiere, with the way they present phenomenon in the show. Characters will fight each other by having a dance battle, or in this
a rap battle.
They will go back in time through these doors in a hallway of sort. Just the way they choose to represent things. We have Lenny doing some Mad Hatter shit in a forest, right? And that, like, in the presence of the astral plane, obviously does lend itself to lots of unique visuals and whatnot. And of course, Noah leaned into that. And I think the finale actually was nice for wrapping up where we had gone. I think in a pretty satisfying and I'd say tender way. I mean, even if we ultimately just kind of close the circle in terms of going back in time, and baby David is now here and at peace, and everyone's going to leave each other alone. I think the last moments everyone had in the finale, I think, were really touching and pretty effective. So overall, quite satisfied with it. And I think it is, I'm not like, again, because I wasn't really invested in the story any much. I'm not like dying to watch more Legion for that. But I just hope, Ted Sarandos, or he's Netflix, John Landgraf and FX under Disney now will still greenlight something that's so out there that they know won't be a ratings darling. Because that's what Legion was, to show that people, only a few people watched it. I think it did lose people with season 2. So I'm happy they kind of returned to form in a certain sense for this final season. What do you think?
No, definitely well said. I think the thing I was most impressed with by the end of season 3, and as the finale, I think, so beautifully wrapped up, was the story, and especially David as a character at times could feel really, really, really big. David in Legion as a mutant has, I think, something like 32 different personalities, and would, depending on which one is in control, can behave differently. Right. And the Legion's powers are I mean, he's what, mega mutant, so he's like the most powerful one possibly ever in the X-Men comics. It's a character that I think is hard to really boil down, and where they got to and what the real crux of the show was repairing your past, repairing the wounds of your past and how those things impact your future. As a major proponent of mental health, I actually was like really impressed with like bringing that message home about like confronting the pains that you've had, trying to find ways of understanding and moving forward. And obviously, not everybody has the powers that David Haller has to go back and actually change your past, but more of um, the metaphor of it, of these pains, the things that lead you to do things that don't necessarily represent who you want to be, you can confront and change. I thought was really cool, and that you need help to do it. He ended up needing, his dad played, Professor X, which I thought was a bit of a choice to all of a sudden start making his parents such a big
episode 3 is all them.
Yeah, and I mean, these are characters you don't see for the first 20 or so episodes, and then all of a sudden we're following them around pretty closely. It's quite a choice, and I think it landed pretty well for how late they were introduced. But I thought just the overall messages Noah was trying to get at came through really nicely. So I give him a lot of credit for that, and doing it in such a unique way, obviously, is really, really cool.
Yeah, I agree. And I think even Carrie, a little bit at the end, gets a bit of a nice send off. They abandoned some other characters, like Potami doesn't really have much to do this season, and Hamish Linklater dies in the season, but Carrie, I think, given that the unique situation that the two Carries are, obviously, I think they, thing with aging at the end, I thought was pretty nice. Even having Lenny have some grief and not be as detestable and wisecracking at the end was an interesting choice. Can't say I saw that coming for Lenny and for Aubrey Plaza, but
I mean, just kind of to piggyback on what you're touching on, I think every character, even Farouk, who is kind of set as the big bad and going back and forth, got a redeeming moment, or at least a humanizing moment in the end. And no one, I think, is in this series is seen as purely evil or purely good. Like there's
right.
It's a real well-rounded character in almost every sense for almost everybody on the show, which is pretty impressive for a show where, I'd say 85% of the show is based around just David a lot of the time and what's going on with him. So pretty impressive.
Yeah. I think this is the best Sid season easily.
Oh yeah.
I think, was it season 1 in particular? We were really critical of the writing for Sid, just because she was really dependent on David for any kind of action to happen for her. And now, even though obviously she's still driven by her, conflict with David, having that moment where she finds peace with her younger self, obviously time travel stuff is present throughout, and I think that was one of the best moments for her. And then even at the end, when Switch kind of thanks her for her service in protecting the world and the timelines and stuff, I think Rachel Keller was really good in these last few episodes. I also really enjoyed just the Noah shit. Like in episode 4, we literally start watching an episode of The Shield with Michael Chiklis for like 30 seconds. Like just the biggest fucking flex. Fucking awesome.
A lot of music in this season. The one that obviously sticks out because it's most recent is the Pink Floyd Mother drop in the last episode, or second to last episode. But really a lot of different musical cues in this, things that really I think other shows have tried to do and don't always do to the same effect. And even if sometimes I'm kind of like, oh, another musical cue, I always felt was really pulled in by them, which I thought was cool, especially using I forgot what the name is, Captain something, but it was what that song was like, is like a recall to like certain points, and how that kind of came back in the finale with David versus Farouk was really, really well done.
Right. It's funny. My temperature was actually pretty lukewarm on the Time Eaters when they first were introduced, just as uh, villains or antagonists. But then once I understood by the end, actually, like that they were kind of like stewards of the of time and space, as it were, I was more cool with it. But obviously, they stand out just because they're like stop motion, like clouds of dark gas or something, and the way they are shown on screen, bouncing around, and then obviously the way like people are fighting them, whether it's Carrie or Sid, it's really cool to watch. And then even on the place in between time and space where Farouk gets stuck, by the way, where it's like a 2D plane almost. Again, just really cool stuff to watch, and just seeing a show invert aspect ratios and invert like the dimensions of the camera. Like no one ever does that in terms of just changing the viewing experience. And again, it's really obvious, like literally showing an episode of an old show. But it just, I think the visual flourishes really stood out for me this season, and it did enough with the characters and the story to, I think, ultimately be pretty satisfying. And even, you think the legacy of this show, interesting to ponder, just because it wasn't that well watched, and the confusing nature of the narrative means it's never going to be that much of a popular show. I still think it's pretty obviously a success. So
yeah, absolutely,
very happy with it.
Yeah, and just to kind of drive home your other point, I do hope different TV executives see Legion and recognize that even if this is a show that not a lot of people watch, that stylistically and artistically it's top tier, and that they start investing in shows like this, because the more and more that TV gets fractured, and especially I think as the streaming age kind of starts to propel to the next stage of everybody having their own platform, you're not going to get the huge ratings anymore. So I think having things that you can look back at and be proud of and feel really curate what you want your channel to be might, Legion is a great example for that.
Yeah, coming to think of it, something that I think is pretty similar in terms of these ideas would be Maniac from last year on Netflix. And Maniac got no love at the Emmys. And that would have been nice to at least get some noms for Maniac, which certainly is a show deserving of some attention, just to show the executives that like the prestige that, hey, there is worth in this kind of untraditional storytelling. So hopefully we'll get some more stuff soon.